Peaky Blinders and
Oh, no.
like that.
There you go.
Yeah.
What is it? I'm Kirby and I'm the king of the racetracks.
I'm Billy Kimber.
Billy Kimber. That's
Kimber. It's amazing.
Most people's English accent sounds like a German accent,
Right.
that they're really going for. Yours isn't bad. Not bad at all.
I'll continue to work on it.
Maybe the whole podcast can be in an English accent.
Can you imagine that?
And I'll have an American accent. Welcome to the Get Peeled podcast. Today we have our one and only guest, Mark Bell. Does that sound American?
Mark
Bell.
Mark.
Come on. You're listening to the Get Peeled podcast, a space for life enthusiasts to get inspired, learn through others about fitness, business, relationships, and life itself. I'm your host, Hannah Eden, a fitness entrepreneur that has an obsession with sweating and a burning desire to share and inspire others with the lessons that I have learned through fitness. Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Get Peeled podcast. I'm Hannah Eden, your host.
And I'm Paulo Barreto, your co-host. Today we're in Sacramento.
That's right.
Woo.
Whoa,
What's going on, baby?
We are in a very different environment today. Don't get this mistaken with the Power Project, which I was on not so long ago. But today we have a very, very special guest. And I'm very excited to be here with Mark Bell.
Oh, I thought you were going to bring in someone special.
No, extremely special guest. And I always do this, and I won't make you feel too uncomfortable, but I do a little bit of digging on our guests before they come on the show. And I've known Mark from a distance, right, for the last few years. Have a lot of different people that we know in the industry that are definitely peers, worked for a lot of companies that are also similar as well. But Mark Bell is extremely famous in this space as being a once upon a time mutant, freakish powerlifter that has set some pretty insane world records, but also an innovative entrepreneur that has worked extremely hard with his wife, Andy, to build an empire, and now actually runs, and we are right in the middle of the facility for the Super Training Gym, as well as the Mark Bell Slingshot, which has become a multi-million-dollar fitness company. But without making you feel uncomfortable with all those weird things, right? We all know this, and if we Google you, we could find out so much information. But the idea behind our podcast is called Get Peeled, right? So we just want to have a conversation about you as a person, as a human being, and the brain and the mind and the power behind the brand, but then also as business, how it evolved to what we get to today. And then we always want to talk about relationships, just from being married or being in this industry for a little, nowhere near as long as you, but being in it, understand the choices we have to make and kind of how to find that balance.
I'm glad you brought that up. I got divorce papers right here, and we're going to have Andy come in, and we're going to go over the divorce right now.
And we're going to sign it right now. Just kidding. But let's go personal, right? We've had the opportunity to train together for the last couple of days, which is always a cool space to be in, to kind of let the guard down and just conversate and talk about mindset, who you are as a person. But let's rewind. I know that there's been multiple versions of Mark Bell, and this version that I'm standing right next to today, I honestly have to say is like one of the most impressive, intriguing is the right word, and inspiring human beings I've ever met in this space. So kudos to you, but tell us about who the fuck you are, bro.
Thank you so much for that. I always like to kind of start out by saying that I grew up with excellent circumstances. You and I were talking a little bit about this the other day, where we were talking about how we know so many people that are successful that have these kind of hard situations that they went through. I kind of chose to, I guess, make up stuff to be hard and challenging for me. But I grew up very, very well. I grew up upper middle class. I grew up with two amazing parents. I grew up in an amazing household, an amazing support system, not just from my brothers and my mom and my dad, but uncles and aunts, and just a lot of love. I've never suffered from not having enough hugs in my life, and I like to point those things out. Because I do think it matters. I do think it matters where we start this kind of race of life, this competition of life, however you want to phrase it. Because there are people that are in different circumstances, that are coming from different circumstances, and ultimately, all that really matters is the results in the end. How many points can you put up on the scoreboard at the end of the day is really truthfully, and it may be kind of hurtful to people, but it's like all that anyone really cares about. What can you do for me? You know, how is this providing value to society? So I always just like to start out with that because my parents taught me a lot of great values and I learned a lot of great virtues over the years. But I would say like kind of just who I am as a person, I've attached myself to what I think is the most important virtue that anyone can have. And I also think it's the most important virtue that anyone can work towards. And that is the virtue of just believing in yourself. And again, I like to say, look, you know, I wasn't abused as a kid, so I don't know what it would be like to try to believe in myself if I was abused or if I was mentally you know, damaged and told that I'll never be shit or that I'm going to always be this way or anything like that. So I always do think it's important to be appreciative of our circumstances and to, you know, recognize that I think a lot of times people, they just, when you ask them about success or how they've been able to, make progress, make improvements, they are quick to start to tell you about it. But I always have to just say, look, man, I have worked hard at stuff. But I also had great parents and had a really wonderful start to my life.
And I think that's interesting because we can relate on that, right? But I've also known and seen versions of you that could be seen now. I know you on a personal level. It's not the case at all. You're extremely calm. Like Paolo can't believe, he's like, I can't believe how calm he is. Like he's so centered and so still, which is something that is really admirable, especially with all the stresses that are in your life, just from business and being a public figure. But is there motivation, right? Like, where did this come from? Like I always used to have this weird battle in my brain of going to therapy, going, why am I the way I am? Because I didn't have a traumatic experience, because I didn't have X, Y, and Z. But as I grew up and older, I recognized traits within myself that were angry, that were aggressive, that were intimidating, and like almost from a bullied standpoint. And from being different when I was younger, I definitely was bullied for being different. And they always say, right, that people that are bullied would generally become a bully. And I went through that whole stage. I don't think that you were a bully by any means, but I think that you grew this really strong exterior. And without knowing you, without knowing what you just told us now, it would be easy to jump to, oh man, that guy's been through some shit. To be able to build an exterior physique the way he is, to have this outgoing, strong personality that's funny, that's witty. Like, was there transitions that have happened? Have you always been this still? Have you always been this calm? Or how did you get to the place that you're at now?
Being able to figure out business and to be able to figure out how to acquire money and how to have financial success and financial freedom has allowed me to spend a lot of time with myself and kind of try to develop techniques and methods on how to handle. It's even hard for me to use the word stress because of the negative connotations that everyone has with that word. But for me to be able to handle life easier. So if something happens, I just care about it a lot less. It's easy to care about stuff less when you already have stuff, right? So what I think is important to point out to people is even if you don't have the money, you actually already have it. You already have a lot of the things that you need. There's a saying that I kind of live by: you'll never have enough of what you don't need. You don't necessarily need more money. You don't necessarily need a new car. If you need anything, you need to work on gaining new perspective. And you need to work on. So for me, it's always been, I can do better. I can be better. You know, I want to develop this strong belief in myself, but I don't need to disbelieve in Paulo. I don't need to like hate on anything he's doing. Oh shit, he's getting real successful in fitness, or Hannah's getting real successful. Oh, she's got this many followers. Like, I don't need to hate on that or to think, oh man, I wonder what it'd be like if I start doing stuff like she's doing. If I start making posts like her or like this other guy. So, you know, having a belief in myself and trying to figure out ways of managing that, trying to figure out ways of not having that be anything that kind of blows up my ego too much. It has been really helpful. And then just additionally is, I just try to think about like, how is being angry going to help this situation? A couple years ago, or maybe not even that long ago, just seems like a couple years ago. I don't know how personal I want to say this, but anyway, we had a situation in my household that could definitely have an overreaction, and my wife reacted to it one way because she is pretty fiery and she can kind of get intense. And that actually is helpful to me because I get to kind of see that and I get to kind of say, oh, I don't know if that is not necessarily it's the wrong way, but I'm always in search of a better way. And so she was getting kind of angry and frustrated with our son. And I said, hey, I think I gotta have better ways of communicating about this. And this was a situation. I don't want to say too much about it, but anyway, I was able to come into the situation and just say, communicate with my son on a level where we could kind of speak almost like man to man, if you will. And we had this conversation and it went well, and I was able to handle it maybe easier because I didn't have an emotion attached to it.
Right.
So I've learned over a period of time that the only place where negative emotions can come from is from a negative interpretation of something. So whenever you have a situation, in this particular case, it had something to do with drugs, and you can have a negative interpretation of drugs, or you can kind of say, I'm pretty sure that drugs and sex have been part of teenagers' lives forever.
Yeah.
Pretty much, from the time our parents were kids to the time that, we have kids now, right? It's been going on for a long time. And so in conversations with my son, I've said, hey, you know what? Drugs are actually fucking awesome. A lot of great music has been made with drugs. Babies have been made off of love, where they probably have grown up with great, great situations. I mean, there's a lot of people go to concerts on drugs. There's a lot of cool things and a lot of innovation that you can probably say, yeah, probably came from mushrooms, or that idea, might have came while someone was smoking marijuana or whatever it might be, right? And so rather than like try to attack this with like any sort of real aggression, let me just kind of think about this a little bit more, and how do we talk about this and discuss this in a more reasonable fashion, in a more reasonable way. And from there, I'm able to point out real life references. I could say, your uncle, my brother, is dead. He's gone. He's not here any longer. He died at a young age because he was addicted to drugs. My uncle died from drug addiction. A lot of my friends have died from opiates and from various types of drugs. So while there might be some drugs that can calm you down and can maybe enhance certain parts of your life, like having a drink with buddies, like shit, man, it gets you fired up, gets you excited. You hug and yell and sing and dance and like whatever. That's kind of cool. But you could also take that same drug, go to drive down the street and be fucking dead, be gone in a second. So you have to think about it. You have to be conscious of it and just really just pay attention to what you put in your body, which is a way different conversation than, I can't believe you acted like this. You're grounded for 3 months and no explanation, no conversation about, so
interesting.
So for me, it's always like, how do I, what's maybe a better way to try to handle a particular situation?
Which comes with so much control, to be able to not react and how you naturally want to react.
It's a practice.
Yeah, man. And that's something that I admire. And you mentioned your brother, Mike, that did pass, and I'm really sorry about that. But you grew up, right? I'm going to see if I can say this right. In Poughkeepsie?
Keep saying it. I love this. This is great.
Keep saying it. I'm not doing it.
Poughkeepsie. Yep.
Poughkeepsie. Oh, it made that look sound so different. Poughkeepsie in New York. Was that a small town?
Poughkeepsie, I think.
Pretty much, yeah.
Poughkeepsie. There we go. A small town. Now, when did you move from there to here? And tell us about growing up. Youngest of three brothers. Did you look up to them? I've heard you say a couple of things while we were training together. Your brother, your oldest brother that passed, was the reason why you got into lifting. And I'm sure most people, before I even knew you, I had seen Bigger, Faster, Stronger documentary, learned a lot about you and your brothers, all cut from the same cloth, and the idea that you're all workers and you're all really cool with your brain and your mind. So clearly your parents did a great job of instilling work ethic, being open to ideas and allowing your imaginations to run free. Was this something that has always been part of your life, or would you say that it's worked against you, that you've kind of been on your own journey to figure it out?
I don't know how my parents were able to do this, but my parents and other family members have done this with their kids too. They just kind of have allowed us to really just breathe and grow, and to the point where I remember being at my grandparents' house where there would be kids running all over the place. I'd be normally the youngest one. I was the youngest one in the family for like a decade, and so I always got the shit beat out of me. I was always crying about something. I don't know what I don't know what my problem was, but I couldn't get my shit together, you know. Someone would be playing baseball and somebody else would be playing basketball. Somebody else would be doing something they shouldn't be doing, and like somebody would have like a sledgehammer and like it's just like this like mayhem, like you're like, what the hell's going on around here? And we would cry and we'd run inside and we'd go to my parents or an adult and say, oh, so and so did, and they were like, go straighten out yourself, go work it out yourself. And I think that kind of mentality of like just playing and just not really having to not having anyone like really tend to your emotions. You were like, well, me just sitting here. I remember my uncle before, telling me like, what are you going to do? Just sitting here cry because you smashed your finger? He's like, look it. He's like, he took me to the window. He's like, look, everyone else out there is playing. It's like, you're in here crying like a baby, which made me cry worse.
Yeah, that's a great message.
Stop it.
Yeah.
To me.
Yeah. He's like, you have opportunity. You could still go out there and you could still play. And he's like, before it's dark, you could still, get some time in. And I was like, oh, okay. So I, kind of learned over a period of time to do those things. One of the most valuable like teachers in my life probably was my oldest brother, because I had an opportunity to see like how many things he did wrong and how many things that, how many times it like hurt the family or hurt himself, and he was so talented and he was so, the way that you guys were showing Nsima some stuff today, my brother could learn like that, where it could be just about anything you could teach him. And he would just, especially athletically, you're like, what the hell? How does he able to show it to him twice? And now he does it better than like the instructor. You're like, that's fucked up. But he was really good with stuff like that. And so he had a lot of talent, but he self-sabotaged himself a lot. And I saw a lot of that. And I was like, man, it just seems counterproductive. He's got all this talent, but he keeps kind of self-sabotaging himself. And it wasn't necessarily him. A lot of times it was these drugs that he was got so addicted to and so attached to. And so I learned even at younger ages, like watching him get arrested, just being at my home in Poughkeepsie, and sitting there just messing around playing video games or something with a friend, get a knock at the door and it's the police and they arrest my brother. It's like just, some really just different kind of stuff that I grew up seeing. I've seen him get in like fights, and it's like, there's fights that people get into where you're like, oh, okay, that guy get hit pretty good. But my brother, he like loved that kind of stuff. He loved confrontation. So if he was going to fight somebody, he was going to damn nearly kill them. And it was something that you didn't want to see. And I would have been better off probably not seeing any of those things, but kind of just seeing how volatile he was and seeing that it never really was useful. It was never really like helpful. It didn't yield like a great result. It just yielded him, being like on house arrest or him being arrested, and him just like really struggling to get out of his own way. As I've gotten older and just kind of gone through life and just life as an adult and stuff, I just recognize how much I get in my own way. And it's in a different way. Like it's not to the same level at which he would do things. But I remember, when I was a kid, I'd be so judgmental towards that. and I'd be like resentful towards that. I'd be like, fuck him. Why does he act like that? Why does he act like such an asshole? And I didn't recognize until later that he was addicted to drugs. He was also bipolar. Like, so he grew up with even though he grew up in the same household, he had different circumstances that he was dealing with, and maybe they were too hard for him to overcome. And so for myself, I'm like, well, you talk shit on him, you should man up, and like, when something comes your way, like, don't overreact to it. Figure out a better way of digesting these things. Figure out a way of interpreting these things better. And I've heard some people say many different things over the years on how you can kind of deflect some of these things. There's a lot of different ways of doing it, but if you think about your emotions being like the weather, we can look outside and we can say, oh my God, like, it's raining out. We can't get an opportunity to go do our walks, or we can't get an opportunity to go do. But what does a little kid think?
It's awesome. Let's play in the rain.
Yeah. Little kid sees a puddle and they're like, fuck yeah, I'm going to go jump in that puddle. So you can interpret these things many different ways. And you can even just say, oh, well, I guess maybe you don't like the rain. That's fine. And maybe you can just say, I'm just not going to go outside for today, but tomorrow's going to be great. Tomorrow's going to be really cool. Or you could put on a rain jacket. You can get an umbrella. Yeah. Like, you don't have to be a bitch about it. You don't have to be a little baby about it. You can just say, okay, these are my circumstances. And, I've heard somebody kind of mention something along these lines too. You don't want to be a creature of your circumstances. You want to be a creator of your circumstances. So you see these things happen, and it's like, okay, it's 30 degrees outside. So what? I'll put on a fucking winter hat and a coat.
I love it.
And it's going to be fun. It's going to be different.
It's going to be fun.
The leaves are going to look different.
Yeah. I'm going to wing a snowball at my wife's head just because I feel like it,
There's so many things about what you're doing, what you're saying, actually. So very stoic, right? There's a writer that we really love, Ryan Holiday. I see his mark. Like, everything that he's saying goes along with this stoic way of life, which is receive the things that come at you, receive the curveballs that life throws at you. And it's completely up to you if they're going to be positive or negative, because ultimately what determines the circumstance is your interpretation of it. And it's never absolute. You, like you said, you may see something one way. I may come in and say, this sucks. And you'll be like, dude, we can do so much with this. Now, going back to also, you're saying the conversation that you had with your wife, whenever your son had whatever was going on, were you always like this? Because for us, and I guess for everyone watching, to see this dude strapped with the elbows strapped all around, lifting fucking weights, you come and you have a conversation and you sound so monk-like. No, man, we got to see the other way. Were you always like this? Because the persona that we see is like, who the fuck you guys having a podcast? This is not Mark Bell. Yeah. Who's that? So were you always like this?
I think I've been seeking it out for a long time. As I mentioned earlier, gaining some financial success early, and I don't mean like it didn't happen super early. It wasn't like I was 20, but at the age of like 35 or so, I was fairly set. And so for the last 10 years or so, I've been exploring a lot of these things. I've always been pretty calm. I remember being with my uncle for a weekend. I was really excited to hang out with my uncle. So my uncle had a boat and he wanted to take me out on the boat every day while we hung out, like in the summer or something like that, when I was 11 or 12 or whatever. And then my dad, picked me up however long later, we hung out for a handful of days or whatever it was. And my uncle or my dad was like, how did Mark like it? And he's like, I got no idea. Because like I'm not really like overly, I'm not going to be like waving my fist in the air, like super fired up and super pumped about stuff. I try not to go too far one way or the other. I don't know where that came from exactly. But I just have never really been that way. And I think as I started to acquire skill sets and as I started to acquire certain things, I recognized that these things might be a little different, but I don't really care to like overly celebrate about them because I just want to keep working. I just want to have my head down and just kind of keep putting one foot in front of the other. And I'll determine if I want to put my hands up or not, but I'm not going to do it because I feel like I have to, or because I saw somebody else do it. I'm going to celebrate, or I'm going to celebrate in my own way.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you guys know people that are like this, where you're like, man, doesn't that guy ever just have a beer? Or doesn't that girl just ever eat a fucking cheeseburger and some French fries or whatever? But that there's certain, I think you kind of mentioned, you're a little bit like this, where that's not fun for you. That's not that exciting to you. It's more exciting for you to stay on your path and you feel better about it. So for me, it's been, I'm not going to get overly emotional one way or the other. I'm not going to really overly worry about it. And I end up like, there's people in the family that sometimes will utilize this to their advantage and they'll come and talk to me. And there's other people in the family where they don't want to bring up shit to me because they're like, I better not ask him anything because he's just going to tell me I can interpret it whatever way I want. And fuck him. I don't really,
give me that talk.
I don't really feel like hearing that today because I want to be pissed off about these certain things. I'll still get negative and stuff about things. But I've even like something so silly as like using social media as a training tool. I'm like, all right, here we go. About to go on Instagram. Yeah. Let's see how good you are at being stoic. You're going to get fired up about current situations that are going on or current political things that are going on. Or you're going to be able to stay, you're going to be able to have and practice equanimity and stay even and stay in the middle, not have your mind shifted towards any one particular thing. I just have found, over a period of time that it's not like it's completely useless to have emotions because you definitely you need to key in on each other's stuff, especially as a relationship grows. And it is important to make people aware that you didn't particularly like something or that you did like something. But other than that, I don't really think I don't think it's super useful to just be frustrated or to be really, really angry. It can work. Like, let's say you got some weird credit card charges or something, right? Like something strange. You got to call up and I don't know what these charges are, and the person on the phone's not cooperating, or it sounds like they have no idea what you're talking about or whatever, and you're starting to get kind of frustrated. Well, you can still get what you want and you can still get what you might need, but it doesn't have to move you. Like, you can say, hey, you know what? No, that's not correct. Like, I'm telling you that I didn't but you don't have to get charged up over it.
Right.
You don't have to actually have emotion attached to it. So I think sometimes we don't understand that, like, something comes in, you get like an output, right? And it starts coming in. It takes you a minute to like process it. And sometimes you're like, fuck that.
Yeah.
But you can take a pause and you can think about it for a second. You could say, oh, wow, what was that feeling? Why am I so closed-minded to what they just suggested to me? That's actually really foolish. I should consider that. That actually might change my business forever if I actually think about it a little bit more. And so that's what I try to do. I try to just to take a little pause, have it not register as something negative in my body, and it's something that has worked well for me.
I think it's also like I'm hearing, which we always talk about, right? Like, these techniques and these thoughts that you're sharing with us, they don't come naturally to me, right? But through a lot of reading, a lot of therapy, and a lot of like self-discovery, that it's a formula, right? And it works. And I think that as human beings, we've all got three voices in our head, right? Like, different spaces call them different things, right? Whether you've got a monk mind, an adult mind, or your ego, your itty ego, whatever you want to call it, right? But we've all got the voices of like the childish mind that wants to react, that's emotional. Then you've got like the strict bitch over here that's like, keep it together. You don't react like that. Be an adult. And then you've got like this middle self that's really probably what comes out of your mouth. But to be able to identify all of those emotions, be able to stop, process, and understand, okay, although I'm feeling like this, I probably shouldn't. So let me have a different perspective on this, and let me look at this from a different point of view. This is the scariest thing because we all have the choice to make that. And we said it yesterday. we all have the choice to react to every situation the way that we want. Our attitude is totally up to us. Our reactions to things are totally up to us. The way we look at things are totally up to us. But that's an incredible strength that you have. And you said something about the fact that you were raised in the same household as your brother, but his truth or perspective of life was clearly very different than where yours is at. And not to make it personal on my side of the family too, but I had the craziest thing happen on my 30th birthday that I haven't spoken about yet. And I think it's transformative. And I mentioned it a little bit yesterday, and I won't go too far into detail, but I grew up with a brother that's just 2 years older than me, in the same household, same parents, same. But his truth and his life was so different than mine. And it was sad, like soul crushing sad, because it was all because of not communicating and not having a conversation and just sweeping shit under the rug, which is why I think I'm so adamant about, no, we're going to sit down and talk about all the feelings. And we spoke about this with Andy too, which we'll get into in relationships. But something happened to him that was trauma. It was childhood trauma. And in the situation, I think I was involved in some way or another, but I was too young. My parents called the police. The police were involved. They were taken to the police station, put in a room just like this. And my brother's like 5 or 6 years old. And he had a vision, or he had a moment that was real that determined the rest of his life, right? So the truth of the matter is that my mom was trying to help the situation, trying to get the authority to come in and help fix whatever happened. But my brother saw my mom on the other side of a mirror and couldn't understand why she wasn't helping him, because he was scared. He was with this big authority figure that he's like still remembers what the guy was wearing on his feet. He's like, that to me was like, I needed my mom's help and she wasn't helping me. I was crying. So for him, then his truth became, my parents don't care about me, when they absolutely cared about him, you know? And then there was authority there that was supposed to fix the solution. They weren't, they were just scaring him. So he grew up with like, fuck mom, fuck dad, fuck authority. No one's going to tell me what to do. Extremely angry individual. And for my whole life, we've totally separated. And then at 30 years old, I'm like, why? I have a brother. Like often in this industry, when you work so hard, your friendships are your friendships, but they're not as common as maybe someone that isn't on the go all the time. So I'm like, I have a brother that I can't even lean on. He doesn't know anything about me. I really don't know anything about him. Why? Let's have this horrible, uncomfortable conversation. So we met up on my birthday and I'm like, I just want to talk to you and tell you about the truth that's going on in my head as to why we're not friends. Then I want to hear why you think that we have this separation between us. And then let's like figure out a new truth and a new story so we can create a relationship. And my God, for 30 years, like we had totally different ideas of what it was. And I just wish that we had done this when I was 20, not 30. You can't take time back. Like family siblings are a big deal. Watched and witnessed a lot of loss. It's like, you can't take those things back. So I think this is a really important conversation to share with everyone that's listening, but clearly you're really good at conversating and really good at communicating. But Andy, your wife, if anyone doesn't know that, we were talking about how we all create the narrative. So if a situation happens, most of the time we retreat. We process it on our own, not out loud because it's uncomfortable or not something that comes naturally to a lot of people. Then we create an entire story of what happened. And that's the story that we live by. That can literally ruin your life in some ways. And just from that simple idea of sitting down and what's your story, what's my story, now let's find the truth is key. Is this something that you and Andy do as in a relationship? Have you been able to talk with your parents and with your brother? Like we've conversated with Chris, you guys are very open and very good at conversing and sharing thoughts and feelings
and being vulnerable.
But yeah, being vulnerable is huge for sure.
So I think, growing up in the same household, as my brother and him having a completely different life than mine, and even my brother Chris having a completely different life than mine, and your experience being different than your brother, it just goes to show you that there's nothing that you can communicate. So words are like limiting. Like I can only convey a message to you in so many words, in so many ways. And my interpretation of what you say can be vastly different than what you intended. Think about Bible verses, I mean, church wouldn't need to exist at all. You wouldn't have a church if what was said in the Bible didn't need like a lot of interpretation. Yep. There's a lot of, it's like open to interpretation. And then the pastor or minister or whatever it they're going to get up there and explain their interpretation. And then people in the audience will get up and they'll say, this is what I experienced, and this is how this helped me, and this is my favorite verse. And then someone else will say, well, this is what I got out of it. The same thing with music, and the same thing with the interpretations of the movements that we were doing today.
Mm-hmm.
You would show me something, and you guys actually both perform the movements really well, but you perform them differently. That's your interpretation of how it should look. It's your interpretation of how it should look. And the cool thing is that you kind of kept saying, hey, it doesn't really matter. Because you're like, just, some of it matters because like there's a little bit of a formula to it, but it's your own expression of your own movement. That's really all we're trying to get out of you. It's almost like a dance, as you would say.
A dance.
It's almost like a dance. And so I think it's important to always recognize that no one has ever conveyed a message. No one has ever conveyed or no one in the history of the world has been able to convey a message the way that they wanted and to have it land on everybody the exact same way. And that'll never happen. So in your relationship, when you communicate with each other, I think it's important to always understand that, when you, tell someone something, or when you, even worse, when you start to build up all these ideas of what someone did and why they did it, the only thing you can do is like say, I need to probably communicate with this person a lot more because I don't have the right details. And I mean, how many times have you done this with family members where you're speculating all these reasons why they did something, and then you go and talk to them about it and they're like, actually, I didn't even have time to think about that.
Yeah.
And you're like, what? You built up all this animosity and like you had this whole story and you were going to punch him if you had to, you were all fired up.
Yeah.
And then it turns out like that there was really nothing going on. They say, oh my God. They say, holy shit. I said that to you and that hurt. Holy shit. I had no idea. Oh my God. Holy crap, I didn't see it from your side. I can't believe I acted that way. How irresponsible, and then maybe they recognize that something they did was off or whatever it might be. But yeah, I think those are really important things to just understand that you can't, in a relationship of any kind, whether it be a relationship that is like a marriage or a sexual relationship or even just a friendship of any kind, I don't think you can really over communicate. I don't think you can really there are some examples where I do think just like some quick family therapy here, I think for people, I would be really cautious of communication through text messaging because of what I mentioned earlier, how it's impossible to convey a message.
Taken anyway. Yeah.
And then a text message is like the worst. A Zoom call or FaceTime or something is a little bit better than a text and obviously in person. So you get something really weird from somebody and you're like, holy shit, I can't believe that guy said that or that girl said that to me. I just say, hey, next opportunity we have, I'd love to get on a call with you. Or I'd love to talk to you more about this situation in person, but I don't think you can like over hug somebody.
Right.
I don't think you can over like love somebody. I tell my kids every night I'm about ready to go to bed and I'm like, I don't think they fucking care. I'm like, no, just go do it. I'll say, all right, Jake, I love you, buddy. Good night. Good night, Dad. He never, he doesn't say it back, but I don't need him to say it back. You go into Quinn's room, she'll be like, why do you say that every night?
Oh, really?
I was like, good night, and I'll just leave, like, whatever. Like, I don't need anything from her. I'm just conveying a message. Yeah.
Right.
And, she'll come around here and there, she's 14. Like when I was a kid, I started, being full of like some piss and vinegar myself. Like I was not a bad kid by any means, but I wanted to like fight people and stuff, and I thought I was tough and all that shit. And I think there's natural things. You got a lot of hormones raging
especially that age.
And going on. And so she's just going through whatever she's going through. And so I don't care. I'm gonna tell her I love her whether she likes it or not.
And here's something I will tell you. I was a very what did you say? Full of piss and vinegar. That was great. I like that. I was like overflowing with piss and a lot of vinegar, but I never really showed love back to my parents, and my parents were the most loving parents, but I felt it even when I never responded to it, and I'd probably be heartbroken if they didn't give me the love, even though I didn't react to it. I'm like that still now, and he can tell you that, but never stop saying that, because like, even if she pretends that she hates it, she fucking loves that. You know, just knowing that your parents love you is a pretty good feeling.
And I promise you, there's going to be one night that you don't.
Yeah.
And she's going to come around.
Are you okay?
What happened?
Did I do something wrong?
You're going to come. Yeah, absolutely.
Something else, just from a relationship standpoint, hugs, kisses, you know, grabbing the butt, like all these different things, you know, these, you guys, we were talking about the other day, is like giving each other a look like, hey, like, you know, what's up? Like, let's go get it on. Right. Like those are all kind of part of a big piece of the puzzle, really. I actually think that the sexual side of things, I think, gets like really swept under the rug, and people should be very, very careful with that, because I don't think that's a good place to be. But I think it's important to every once in a while just like stop your partner in their tracks and just say, hey, you know what? I absolutely love you. Yeah. Like, you're amazing. You're an amazing person. I'm proud of you. I'm proud of us. You know, like, hey, can we just pause for a fucking second here? Yeah. And can we be, I was mentioning earlier about celebrating, you know, I'm not a really big fan of celebrating, but when there's a good reason to, I'm going to fucking celebrate. Yeah. That's a reason to celebrate. Because how hard is it to navigate this world by yourself?
Oh, man.
And then now you found someone else to like,
willing to do it with you?
Yeah, they're willing to do it with you, and your own shit that you have going on, the 3 different voices in your head. Now we got 6 different voices.
Yeah, man.
Fucking throwing around the room. Like, this is some complicated. Now we're going to have a business together. Some complicated wild shit going on.
And I can't wait to go there with this, right? So we talked.
Just get over and give me a goddamn kiss.
Yeah, right?
Come on.
Come sit on my lap, baby.
Right.
And I will say that Paolo's really good at that. I move so fast a lot of the time, and like stopping to slow down and have sex in the middle of the day is just not on my agenda. You know what I mean? But like, this guy is so good at doing that. His love language is 100% physical touch.
Called having a meeting.
Yes, you got to pencil. You got to schedule that meeting in though. If it's on the calendar, you know I'm going to show up.
Why does this meeting have a smiley face next to it? Weird.
With an emoji and a tongue out. What's happening
baby,
here?
Here in the calendar, it says Funky Town. Where is that? Where are we going?
Funky Town.
And that, you said you didn't want to go too far into it, but from being in a relationship, I've been with Paolo for over 10 years, right? You and Andy have been together for a long time, which we're going to get into for sure. But I think that is something that's overlooked, because having romance, doing secret love letters, or acknowledging your partner throughout the day, making time to go out for dinner and doing stuff that maybe doesn't fit the agenda or isn't on the schedule is important to do. And sex that comes into that too, right? Like, the more busy you get, the more things that happen, you get tired. There's every reason as to why sex isn't a priority. But I think that we could both agree, I don't know if we're over speaking here, but like, as soon as the sex is off, everything is off. The chemistry's off. The way I'm acknowledging or picking up what you're putting down, it's got some kind of weird sass to it that's not normal. And then it comes straight back to sex. Like, we have friends that don't sleep in the same room, or they haven't had sex for 6 to 10, 12 months. Like, this is probably a big reason as to why you guys can't see eye to eye, why there's no connection, why the chemistry is off, and why you think that you're working against each other rather than with each other.
Well, how good would it make you feel if, like, forget about like actually cheating for a second, how good would it make you feel to know that your partner is just getting a little chunk of relationship stuff from somebody else? Like, that kind of sucks.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, this, it doesn't always have to be like that they're fucking, you know what I mean? But they're getting like something that you're no longer providing any longer. And it's like, shit, man. Well, if that happened, why not just figure out a way to have a conversation about it?
Right. It's so true. So I think that's a key point, and we should definitely have a podcast on sex sometime, you know? I think that'll be a great conversation. But you know, I'm trying to stay impersonal and not shift him over, but it's all going everywhere and I love it. But you as a person, and now we've talked about, you know, your mindset, how you're so calm. Let's talk about your morning routine. But I got a message this morning, I think it was like 5:40. I'm like, there's another sick fuck that's awake at this time that's so excited to be awake and outside. And your energy, man, like it was on fire and there was no one around. That wasn't for Instagram. That was for me personally. And you're like, look up. It was like, okay, this is awesome. And I understand how much my mornings mean to me. I do it without a phone. So I feel like I should bring a phone now just so we can chat. But if I don't have that morning, the whole day is off, man. Like I'm irritable, stressed out, fucking tired and just tweaking out. Tell us about your morning routine.
I just want to open a quick parenthesis. I was having a conversation with Mark in the kitchen now. And I was like, man, I saw that you were at the Tim Ferriss podcast. That was really awesome. Here, baby. And Tim has a book that Hannah bought for me. It's called The Tools of Titans. And basically he interviewed hundreds of people throughout his time. And he wrote a book trying to create this common thread between high achievers. And I'm telling Mark about it and he goes, yeah, I'm in that book. I'm one of the Titans. I'm like, get the fuck out of here. I didn't get to your page, man. So, I mean, it's not something like, hey, Mark, tell us about it. It's something that's huge amongst every high achiever. So go, man. Tell us.
Shit. I forgot what the original question was.
What's your morning routine? What do you do in the morning?
Morning routine. You know, I try not to be overly regimented with anything because I think that I think we need to be a little cautious with our expectations. Like you'll find that expectations will oftentimes, almost every time, almost 100% of the time, they'll mess with your emotions. Yeah. Because a lot of times they'll leave you disappointed. Oh, I thought this was going to happen this way. And it doesn't. Right. So I try to do stuff. I'm like, what's reasonable? You know, is it reasonable for me to wake up at 4 a.m. every single day? Or should I do it as it calls to me a little bit more? Like if I wake up at 4 and I'm like, it's not really reasonable for today, then I should be smart enough to just go back to bed and say, hey, you went to bed a little bit later. You don't get the same opportunity this morning to enjoy the morning the way you normally do. You'll have to do it tomorrow. So I like to always kind of back that up that way because some people are, you know, they get so into it that if they don't have it, that everything else is thrown off too much and they're too pissed and too. So even though it kind of jabs at me all day, like you're talking about, I try not to like have it bleed into other aspects of my day if I don't get in exactly what I want. But for the most part, I like to be up pretty early. I don't ever use an alarm clock. I go to bed and I just wake up when I wake up. And if I wake up and feel good enough, I usually just pop on outside and I go for a walk. I walk many different routes and many different places so sometimes like if I'm kind of tired and kind of dragging, I'm like, you know what? I'm going to go to more like a downtown area because even though it's 5 a.m., there's other crazy people out that are walking around a little bit too. And I get a little bit of energy from that. And so I'm like, I'm going to walk from like 5 to 6, especially around 6 o'clock. There'll be other people out and I'm going to utilize that energy. A lot of other times I'm like, you know what? You know, especially that kind of 4 a.m., 4:30 time. I'm like, I'm going to go walk in the woods and it's going to be awesome.
Also, you drive to your locations. It's not just around, leave the house and walk around the block.
Yeah. Yeah. Cool. I usually, a lot of times I'll drive to a spot. And then like this morning, I was just like, you know what? I used to walk with my dad a lot. And I'm like, I need to walk with him more because he's been riding his bike a lot. But he was like, riding my bike's too easy. He's like, I need to walk more. So I was like, okay, well, we'll just walk. He's had many surgeries and many health issues over the years. So he can't walk super far. So he and we walked a little bit, walked him back to his house. And then I ended up doing my 20,000 steps for the day. So I like to get in, a couple of miles, really. And I'm kind of casual with that too. Every other day, the walk turns into a walk run. And I'm really a big fan of utilizing these opportunities as things to like strengthen my mind and strengthen my spirit, really. And so what I do is I'll just, because I think that the more you tell yourself you're going to do something and the more that you fulfill that, the stronger you become over and over and over again.
It's like a muscle, right?
Yeah, to the point where the belief in yourself is like maybe not even very realistic anymore, you know? And there's actually some research behind some of these things where your dopamine gets excreted even more so people think, oh, I'm going to go for the dopamine, I'm going to go for the donut. And you can get it from a donut. It works. I mean, that's why it's so seductive. You're like, I'm going to go for the ice cream or the donut or whatever it is. Those things do work. But my understanding is that you get even more of a dopamine release when you stick to the plan that you set forth for yourself.
Yeah.
More so than you would get for the donut. And if you think about it in the long term, how much just the cascade of hormones and different things that are going on in your body when you're like, I told myself I was going to do that. I just fucking did it. And I did it again, and I did it again, I did it again.
Mm-hmm.
So when I'm on these walks, I'm like, okay, when I get to that stop sign right there, I'm going to run to that tree. And it might be 50 feet or it might be 200 yards. You know, it kind of depends. But normally what happens is I tricked myself. I'm like, all right, well, running to that tree, that wasn't hard. That was only like 50 feet, dude. You should run further. And I'll say, I'm going to run to that lamppost up there. And I will. And I'll do it over and over again. And I'll kind of repeat it. Or I'll say like, shit, man, Nothing Else Matters is on from Metallica, one of my favorite songs. I'm like, I'm just going to keep running until this song is over. So
this
shit like that.
So I don't know if you know this or
savage.
not, but this is called Fartlek Training.
There we go.
Yeah. So when you're in running, we use
I knew there was a fart in there.
there's a fart in there. So we're going to bring it back to poop. So Fartlek Training translating to speed play. And a lot of times it's used by landscape. So landscape determines what workout you're going to hit. And studies within running say that sometimes they're the most efficient and effective styles of training because you don't understand what you're going to do. So your systems can't come into play to make you feel less
It's a little
confident.
disorganized almost.
Exactly. But sometimes being unstructured is the best way to get the best results. Like I think about training when it's performance. If I train alone, 9 times out of 10, I'm going to do better than if I train with the fittest people because I'm only going to go as fast as the fittest person. If I don't know how fast the fittest person is going to go, then I'm truly going to go as fast as I can go, you know? So Fartlek Training, what you're doing is a huge piece of running training. And watch, before you know it, you're going to be running around countries. And you're going to say, oh, I'm going to get to that hill. And then you're going to say, oh, there's a lighthouse. And that's exactly how I've ever done any long distance things. Because if you're like, I'm going to run a half marathon, well, fuck, I know what a half marathon feels like. So a mile in, I'm like, oh my gosh, 1 mile down, I've got 12.6 to go. You know, it's like a mental block. So I think that's really interesting that the goal wasn't, I'm going to do Fartlek Training. It's just like, I'm going to do this. And you're a natural philosopher without even trying. You know, it's like all these things that people put in books and try and teach people just happen naturally to you, which is pretty damn impressive.
Yeah, you're saying that you can chase that dopamine with a donut, sure, but it's different whenever you chase it by deploying self-discipline. Basically, doing shit that you don't really want to do all the time, but you do it. And then once you do it enough, you're like, man, fuck it. Why don't we start another company and why don't we do this?
Yeah.
I'm like, are you kidding me? Like, no, we can do it. It's going to be fine. And talking about that, babe, I don't want to know if you want to, if you have anything in the trigger, but dude, inventor, that's amazing. Like to me is amazing. Because at some point, Hen and I was like, why don't we invent something that's going to make kettlebell training this and this way? It's not something that's easy. It's not easy to take it off the ground. It's not easy to stick. When did it happen? How did it happen? How was inception? When you brought the idea to life first, how many people said, shut up, man, let's just lift?
Are we referring to the slingshot here?
Well, there's a few products,
right.
But yeah, let's talk about the slingshot because this is...
The one thing that I did have that I want to quickly go before we get too far into the inventions was you said something that people were going to want to punch you in the face for in a good way. And I do it too. But you said that you don't set an alarm clock and that you can naturally wake up in the morning without having an alarm clock. Now, very recently I've been able to do that too. But there's only one thing that will allow me to do that, which is to sleep with the blinds open. If the bedroom is dark, I'll sleep till 7. But if there's any natural sunlight coming in, no matter what state we're in, automatically my eyes will open like 4:30, maybe 5, maybe 5:30 if I'm tired. But do you sleep with your room? Do you have blinds? Do you have windows? How's that set up for you?
the room is, pretty damn dark.
That's amazing.
And sometimes I'm wearing like, the eye shade things or whatever. I got a lot of shit going on. I got like this special mouthpiece because I've had some sleep apnea in the past. So luckily I don't need a sleep apnea machine, but I got this mouthpiece that ends up kind of positioning my tongue on the roof of my mouth.
Jaw, yeah.
And sets the jaw forward a little bit. Then I also use mouth tape. I don't know if you guys ever
heard about this.
Yeah.
Which is hilarious because Paula keeps waking me up because I'll try and watch TV and I'm like this. So unattractive.
So the mouth tape is
says,
your whole,
hey,
really?
Will you turn over and shut your mouth? I'm like, yeah, sorry.
Yes. I mean, I guess the information is like it's supposed to be more productive to breathe in and out of your nose through your sleep. And so I've been utilizing that for a while. It was suggested to me by a friend of mine a while back. And if you look up some of the work of James Nestor, I think his name is, and there's been books written on like the oxygen advantage, which was written by somebody else. But anyway, most of the information kind of points to like that might be something that can help people. If you already have like sleep apnea or something, I don't think taping your mouth is probably a great idea. But does
it just literally like from your jaw? How does it work?
Yeah, it doesn't work great now that I got this mustache going on. But it's just literally like a thing of tape that goes over your mouth. You can look it up on Amazon. You just type in mouth tape and you'll find some products. But some people just take tape and they just make an X shape on their lips and they tape their mouth shut.
Sadistic shit right there.
Yeah, I know. People are probably like, what the hell? Like that sounds crazy. But it can have a really positive effect on your sleep. And what I'll say about it is that I've noticed, and Nsima has noticed, and a few others have noticed, we don't think we need as much sleep. I'm not saying you get to like completely gyp the system, but I don't normally sleep that long anyway. I like to go to bed around 10 or so is like probably when I fall asleep, and I'm waking up at like 4. And some nights that gets interrupted and I don't go to bed till 11 and still waking up at 4. And so but I still feel like I have really good energy every day. So I think it might be a little bit of a hack, but I got the mouthpiece in, I got the mouth tape on, and sometimes I got the eye things on too. Ooh. So
you're all set up.
I need like a fucking helmet or something to go to bed. But waking up is just not really that big of a problem for me because I think I've gotten used to waking up at those times. Anyone who has not practiced this or anyone who has not tried this, the next time that you wake up at like 3:45 in the morning, do me a favor and just try it. Just stay up.
Yeah.
Try to stay awake.
Yeah.
Yeah. You might be tired as shit, but like seriously, grab a flashlight. Like don't go anywhere where it's unsafe. I know it might be different for females versus guys and stuff like that, but don't go anywhere where it's unsafe. Make sure there's like a light. Bring a flashlight with you. Bring a weapon with you if you need to.
Yeah.
Do whatever you need to do, but like fucking go outside for a walk. You'll be shocked. You don't have to do that every day, but just try it. And I think I like to encourage people to just maybe work on maybe not waking up that early all the time, but work on waking up a little earlier, like earlier than you're used. If you're normally getting up at like 7, just see what happens when you get up at like 6.
Yeah.
Start working on that. Because for me, it causes a cascade of other disciplines to happen. And so, I mean, what's it like waking up at 4 a.m.? It's pitch black still usually, like especially becoming this time of year. And so because of that, I have to set some clothes out from the night before. So my next day is already kind of in motion. As soon as I get up, I already got stuff ready. All I got to do is go over to my coffee thing and hit the button. It's like everything's all kind of ready to go. I'm not a super organized person, but I can handle doing some of that.
You are, man.
And
fuck yeah, you are.
Yeah, and I'm ready to go. Sometimes if I know I'm doing stuff here with other people, I might have a change of clothes set out too, because it's like I don't want to be fumbling around with all that. And I know, part of my morning routine that I left out, I can't believe I left this out, but a huge part of the morning routine is to take a dump.
Oh yeah.
It's a big part of it. That coffee hits, and if I cannot, that's a huge part of the morning routine. Like I cannot leave the house until that has to be, the first wave has to be taken care of.
And you better clench and hope to God the second wave's not coming when you're in the woods.
Yeah.
Otherwise you'll have to get a shovel out and shit in the woods like I told you about.
After the chocolate salt.
Yeah, right?
That will give it a second wave.
After those electrolytes, you got to be careful. But Yeah, man, that's how I do it. I don't think once you get used to waking up in the morning, I don't think you'll really need an alarm. And in just hearing like Matthew Walker and some other people talk about sleep and the importance of sleep, these people that study, they research sleep a lot, and they just are like, hey man, like if you're waking up with an alarm, I think you're maybe not doing it the right way. So I heard that years ago, and I'm like, I am just never using one ever again.
Honestly, there's nothing fun about being startled when you wake up. That's like the worst feeling for me.
Yeah.
We had a horrible story happen with a friend that did that on the day of a marathon. Their alarm overset, right? So from the second that their eyes were awake, their whole system was shook. He woke up startled, then immediately felt like he was late. So the adrenaline was running, shows up to the race late. And I'm talking like, I thought he was going to come in first kind of deal, like such a fit athlete. And then because he went out hard, his whole system shut down. He blacked out. His whole body just like, he woke up on the back of an ambulance. Like, what the fuck just happened to me? With all these wires everywhere. And it's like waking up or having the first stimulus to your heart should not be so intense, right?
Yeah, man. And I was talking to Mark about this because you mentioned that whenever you had your first kid, I think, you're like, dude, you start playing with them in the morning and I still have a bunch of shit to do. And actually, Andrew was saying the same thing. And I feel like this epiphany happens to dads and moms because it's like, fuck, now we have a kid and there is no option to, oh man, let me just, work out at 11 p.m. So you said, and Andrew said the same thing, saying, dude, it clicked to me, I need more hours in my day. I got to wake up early. And so Andrew was telling us about his routine. He wakes up, works out, and by the time he's done, showered, done with the workout, it's like 6:30.
Mm-hmm. You've had a whole day.
Yeah. And then I was actually mentioning one of our buddies, Hannah's really good friend, Jeremy Scott. He said the same thing. He goes, man, I'm an average man. And the only way to get ahead was I need more hours and I need to read more. So he started waking up super fucking early and consuming over 100 audiobooks a year.
Yeah.
And then you just become this machine, this fucking savage, and nothing can stop. And this is one of the things that I'm taking from this trip. Gotta wake up early. I'm doing my best, and I'm gonna do even better. I promise you.
And it doesn't mean that you go to bed late and wake up early. It just means that you try to get the most out of every single day. And for different people, it looks different ways. My father-in-law was really successful, and he owned his own business, and he would go to work at like 11 and he'd wake up at like 9. So I want to make sure that I'm not painting a picture like that you can't be a success because you're not waking up early, but I still encourage people to try to wake up earlier than whatever you're used to, because even in the case of my father-in-law, there was many, many years where he was waking up at 5 a.m. to go get it, and then once he already got a lot of stuff done, then he could revert to kind of doing whatever he wanted.
Yeah.
Hannah became this person, man. She was not.
Oh my gosh, no. Naturally.
I remember at some point, like in my 20s, I'm thinking, man, whenever we have kids, she's so into sleeping. Like, what the fuck? Like, how's it going to be? And then all of a sudden, we started the RV trip, and she's like, I wake up. I'm like, man, what's going on? And I open the little window, and she's outside like it's fucking 6. What is she doing, man? It's cold. It's nice. Let's stay in. But she started this whole freaking thing. And then more people that we speak, our friends that were, meeting this trip is like, yeah, man, I wake up, start my routine super early. I'm like, it's got to be something to it.
And I remember having conversations as me being the crazy person that can't sleep. And at first, not so much anymore, I let him do his thing. But at first I'm like, man, you got to get up earlier. Like that there's so many things that have to happen. We got to get up now. I remember the conversation was like, Hannah, what the fuck is wrong with you? I'm waking up at 7:30 in the morning. Like, that's normal. And I'm like, oh my gosh, I guess that is normal. And that's probably early. I don't know. Like, we do own our own business. There's no boss telling you to be there at the office at 9. But like, the more hours in the day, the less stress for me, right? And it's not, everything isn't crammed in. It's like, I can take my time in the morning. I like to journal. I don't walk like you do. I'm totally going to do that just to generate blood flow. But like this morning, we're on the 10th floor in the hotel. I'm like, man, I'm feeling a little tired. I just run down 10 floors, run up 10 floors. I felt on fucking fire when I got back. And it's like just generating movement or stimulus inside of your brain. Like mine is no cell phone and to write. Like I just write down I'm an emotional woman, and some shit doesn't matter. And half the time, it matters so much when it's inside of my brain. But once I've written it down and read what I'm saying, I'm like, you're fucking pathetic. Get over that. That's not important. That shouldn't be brought up. It just helps me work through thoughts and not be so irrational, and just like feel like I'm starting off on a steady space rather than like super intense, which I am very much like that.
I want to say also too, I think part of the calmness was learned through powerlifting. You know, powerlifting is a huge piece of this this puzzle. I mean, just imagine what it would be like to literally feel a lot stronger than everybody else that you know. Like, and I felt that way for many, many years. And a lot of times in the case of lifting weights, it was the case. There might be other attributes someone might have that are stronger because maybe they did gymnastics or maybe they did Olympic lifting or whatever it might be. But talk about having security, you know, as opposed to like insecurity. So like, I don't have any reason like, you know, I'm not gonna like fight anybody. I don't really care it would be like almost nearly impossible for someone to get me to like fight them. Like I'm not a confrontational person in that way. But just knowing that you have this strength inside of you at all times is like a really awesome thing. And I think there's like jujitsu practitioners and people like that who they just know like I can fuck up anybody at any time.
Yeah.
And they feel good about it, but they don't. It's not like you would think. It's not like, oh man, if I was like that, I would just go and pick on everybody because it would be funny, you know. Or someone makes you mad at the movie theater, and you're like, fuck you. Or whatever.
Yeah.
You just don't even care.
Yeah.
You don't care because you already know. You're like, I already got all that. And so I think marathon runners and people that have competed on high levels in anything can probably relate because they're like, I don't need to worry about what that person's doing. Like, I already got my own shit going on and it's going pretty good.
Yeah.
The other thing that powerlifting really did for me too is so like growing up and like kind of buying the story that I was dumb because I was put into special classes. I was just kind of the kid that, you know, they would say, you know, what color is the sky? And I was like, I don't know, gray, white, yellow, orange, you know, sometimes it's blue. You know, I just had different perspective on the way things are. And so I ended up in these kind of special classes. It took me longer to learn. I was maybe learned slower, especially at certain things. I had some learning disabilities and maybe looking back on it, maybe I had ADHD. But at that time, I wasn't really diagnosed with anything, which was actually probably a good thing because it's worked through it rather than like being loaded up on like medications or something like that. But later on in life, being slow, you know, quote unquote slow, and working things out slowly ended up being a huge asset. Ended up being a massive asset because in creating business and creating products and being in a relationship and just managing a lot of stuff in life, it actually is an amazing superpower to be kind of slow. And just say, I'm going to think about this a little bit more. Maybe because I always thought that I didn't have the advantage of just coming up with something brilliant right away. Maybe I thought like, okay, well, because maybe you're not as smart as some of these other kids, maybe you just need to take your time with it. Like, and that was usually the case, like with math and stuff like that. It would just take me longer to learn it. Like it might take me 20 minutes to get through this question, whereas it might take another kid 2 minutes or something like that. It's like, so what? It just took you longer. Business, anything you want to be successful in life. I mean, you guys, you can go through the list in your head of every single person that you know, and you don't know one person, and anybody listening to this, you don't know one person that's successful in anything that hasn't been doing it for like 10 years.
Right.
And sometimes it's usually even longer than that. So just understanding that like, hey man, I can't be over anxious. I have to be calm because I don't have any other choice. Like this is the way that my brain works. This is the way that I work. I got to chill. And also, what a great metaphor for powerlifting because it takes a really long time to get strong. And then what do powerlifters do? they fucking sit around forever. They do a set, they drink some water, they fart a little bit, drink some protein,
Do it again.
sit down for 5 minutes, and you're like, man, is this guy even lifting? And then he goes and picks up 600 pounds for a couple reps, sit back down for 6-7 minutes.
For years.
Yeah, for years on end.
Over and over again, yeah.
Over and over again. The training itself is slow. The acquisition of strength is a very slow process. It can't be rushed.
Yeah.
You can get strong by having like interrupted rest intervals. You can certainly do that. But the way to get the strongest and the way to like peak for a powerlifting competition is to really rest in between those sets, recuperate, so you can lift a percentage of weight that registers in your body as being intense enough to where your body has to adapt to it.
And don't they say it's like 2 to 3 minutes before your ATP levels are even coming close to recovery?
2-3 minutes rest for a power lifter is
quick.
Way too fast.
Yeah.
I mean, when you compete in a powerlifting competition and it goes through a full flight of individuals lifting in between you, you got anywhere between like 8 to 12 minutes.
Wow.
Like you got a long time.
Yeah.
There you go.
Sometimes it could be too long, but that's about how long you got. And even in your training sessions, when you start to get into really moving around like the big boy weights, you're just like resting however long you think you need.
There you go.
I think you just said a few things there that like blew my mind. Putting myself out there as well, like putting the reason why we went on the trip to move into an RV was literally so I could find a way to slow down. So the fact that you say like that you think that you had ADHD when you were younger, that's being slow, people gave you shit for that. It was like a negative thing.
Mm-hmm.
As you grow older, these like weaknesses become your strength, right? I was always punished or rebellious or let this ADD out in like a negative way. And was always like, this girl's got a problem. We got to separate her. She needs to be put in the class and she can't fucking concentrate. She's disrupting everyone in the class. And it's like all of these differences or like the quote unquote problems that we had when we were younger. So many successful people that are extremely, extremely successful in any space often all had quote unquote problems that they managed to channel into a space that they took a lot of interest in and they succeeded. So these different pieces about you that used to be seen as a negative thing are probably a huge reason as to why you're so successful. And we had a very similar conversation about this with my parents on a Zoom call and a whole bunch of other mothers. And they were bawling their eyes out because my mum was saying like, we didn't know what to do with her. Like she was always the problem child, you know, like that she was getting in trouble for being this energetic and outgoing and intense. And all the mums were like crying. They're like, this is making me feel so good because I have a son that's 4 and he's having behavioral issues and he's really getting down on himself. And it's like, well, no, I don't think so. If they're just seen as what they are, you can't change it. Like you said, like this is the way that your brain works. Let's find a way for this to work for you and not against you, and not let this individual grow up thinking that they're different, they're a problem, that they are like disabled in some way because of their brain is not the way that it's supposed to be and isn't so on track. You know, I think that being different is something that is overlooked and people don't share that kind of thing, you know, but there's so many successful people that were kicked out of school. I had a conversation with Joe DeSena, the CEO of Spartan, and he said the same thing. It's like, it seems like a lot of people, they go through either a rebellious stage or a problematic stage. And then if they're able and they have the right support system, that they can channel it. The barbershop with the LeBron James, right? And they're talking about how there's like 15 people from his hood that he grew up with, and so many of them are dead or in jail, but why are 3 or 4 of them NBA players? And they said that the one common theme was the support system and the structure around them that allowed, even though there was negative opportunity at their fingertips, they like channeled them into the right spaces. And by the sounds of things, your parents are incredible humans as well. And they didn't make you feel different or in a bad way. They loved you through it and helped and supported you to this, which I think is a great transition to where you were going with the inventions.
You know, I just want to add, encouragement is a huge thing. So I think that children might be a little more simple than we think. They also, at the same time, it's important to understand that they know a lot more than you think, and they are like way more advanced than you think. But when I say simple, I just mean that like I think all they really need is encouragement. That's really all they usually require. And even thinking of like my oldest brother, the way that my parents parented him was different because he broke down walls for my parents. My parents didn't know how to parent. I was their third attempt at parenting rather than their first go of it.
Mm-hmm.
And so they kind of learned, they had opportunity to learn and to grow and to better understand their children. But my parents were very religious, and, with religion came these set of rules. And my brother wasn't following the rules. So there was always this constant fight. But what if instead of there being a fight, what if there was to say, I wonder kind of what's at the root cause of why my son wants to choose some of these drugs. Mm-hmm. Like, is it just because he's a teenager? Is he just rebelling? I wonder if he maybe perhaps, I just don't think people were thinking this way years ago, but maybe he has some sort of disorder, or maybe he needs to channel his energy somewhere else. Like, he was kind of like known in our town. His nickname was Mad Dog. He was known in our town as like the town badass. Well, maybe he should get into some like martial arts or something. Maybe he should get into like some grappling or jujitsu and
channel it.
Yeah, channel this energy, or even just having the conversation with him of saying, some of these drugs that you're choosing are very dangerous, and they are drugs that you can get addicted to. If you're gonna choose to do any sort of drugs, maybe find things that are less addictive, because there certainly are things that are, the drug of choice that you select can matter a lot, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't know, maybe maybe those things would have been helpful, and maybe you can kind of almost, I don't want to say like encourage drugs, but give a child different perspective rather than saying, you're not doing this in my house. This is not going down this way. Maybe there's other ways rather than having that friction, because that friction is probably going to want to make the kid go the opposite direction.
Absolutely.
And that seems to be a common theme, right? In parenting, it's like, if your parents want you to do one thing, you will always do the other. And especially if they make it very known that you want them to, they want you to do this one thing, then it's like, well, fuck, I really want to do the other one now. Your parents are really good at not doing that. My parents were really good at not doing that too. With saying like I moved from England where you can drink at 18 to the US where it's 21, right? At that age, it was like earth shattering for me. But my parents never made it a thing because they knew that I was English. They offered me wine every night for dinner. I didn't want it because it was annoying that my parents were offering me wine when I'm supposed to not drink till I'm 21. Whereas if they had probably said, hey, don't drink now we're here in the US, you got to wait till you're 21, I probably would have been like, you know what I mean? And the girls I grew up with in England that had issues with drinking, I just had issues with bad attitude, but they would shoulder tap because their parents were so strict that they had a curfew that had to be home to, that they'd wait outside of convenience stores and tap on strangers' shoulders and have their stomach pumped because it was such a like,
what's that?
Untouched.
What's shoulder tap?
When you stand outside of like a liquor store and you wait for an adult that's definitely of age, but probably a loser that would buy a minor alcohol. Yeah.
Oh, that's a thing. Huh?
That's totally a thing, especially in England. But it was all of the girls that had really crazy, I went to an all girls school, right? They had crazy strict parents and they all rebelled. And
that's
so
a good
extreme.
example too. Like, people going to all boys school or all girls school. It's like, it might make you boy crazy. It might make you girl crazy. You have this like such restriction that, this is, it can end up leading to like, I don't know, you just going the other way, right?
Totally. But parenting, man, fuck. So scary. So difficult. So
you guys will figure it out when the time comes.
I know. Can't wait.
So we talked about inventions, and I know that we've been doing a long one. I like this one. But let's talk about how you got into business, how this all began. You were telling me your first business adventure with Andy. Andy seems like she's the most amazing human when it comes to that. You guys are a crazy strong team. We've got brains, we've got beauty, we've got brains, and you guys work so well together. But let's rewind, right? Everyone knows you now for the slingshot, along with your knee sleeves and other products that you do. But let's rewind a little bit. What was your first business adventure?
Yeah, Andy and I was at the dinner table. I think I just finished my meal, and I was checking out this magazine, and I'm kind of thumbing through it. And I think she's putting some stuff away, and I'm just like, looking at this, it was called Powerlifting USA. It was a powerlifting magazine. And I was like, man, I love that there's a powerlifting magazine, but I'm like, this magazine kind of sucks. And the magazine, looking back at it and having done a magazine thing now myself, I could say that it was actually like a good thing. It was great for powerlifting, but I'm looking at it, I'm like, man, this thing kind of sucks. And I'm like, they had this article in here about this guy like bench pressing 275 pounds. I'm like, that's not very strong. Like, I want to learn from like the real beasts. Like, I want to learn from like the best. Like, that's the bodybuilding magazines. When you look at like Flex magazine or Muscle and Fitness and stuff from back in the day, they would have like the best people, and you would see like, hey, what this guy did to, build this crazy physique or whatever, even though the article was probably made up or whatever it was. I was like, this kind of sucks. And Andy's like, well, we should just make our own then. And I was like, huh? I was like, we can do that? She's like, yeah, I can figure it out. My wife previously was part of a company called Fitness Management, and Fitness Management had a magazine. And it was a trade magazine that would go out to a lot of gyms, and she would advertise Hammer Strength and Life Fitness and all these different companies. So she would, she has been to these like trade shows and was in advertising for a long time, and so she kind of knew how to do that. She's like, yeah, she's like, I know people that are in publication, and I also know how to sell ads. So she's like, I can do that part of it. She's like, as long as you can get some articles, you get some people to write, then
You're
we
like,
got
all my buddies.
Yeah. And I'm like, all my friends know how to write, like this would be like, they don't know how to write, but they know about strength. And so we found out later they don't know how to write as we started to like edit some of it, but they knew how to put together good information for people to be able to get stronger. And so we started a magazine company called Power Magazine. We had that magazine for about 5 years and had a really good run with it, and it was a lot of fun. And it was kind of our first exploration into doing some business stuff. The slingshot thing came along a little bit, kind of like midway through that. But I think Power Magazine was great for us because our jobs were so different.
How was life back then? What were you doing before magazine? Where you guys living? Yeah, so I'm, knee deep in powerlifting, and I'm 300 pounds, and I'm, we have kids, two small children, and our income was not very good. Like my wife, I think, she had that job with Fitness Management magazine, and she was able to like do some of that. And then we were doing Power Magazine same time, but the money coming in from the magazine wasn't great. It got to be a little better later on, but it took a while. I had my own gym, Super Training Gym, which I've had since 2006. I would say that would be our first business venture, but it's not really a business because Super Training is free. And so there really wasn't really much money Which is insane.
Yeah.
For you to think that.
It
What a
wasn't,
great idea.
yeah, there wasn't really much money to be made from it. It was like a passion project because I love powerlifting, and I didn't want to figure out how to chase powerlifters for money. So the gym was free. And also it was part of my mission to be as strong as I possibly could. I knew I wouldn't be able to do it by myself. So I was like, let me get some other like-minded people around, some savages, and let's not really worry about the money thing. That shit will maybe work itself out some other time or some other day. And yeah, so that's like kind of where we were in our life, but we were also in the middle of losing our house. We lived in Woodland, California, and I was such a bum when I first met my wife. I didn't have a license. I didn't have a car. I didn't have a bank account. I didn't have a credit card. I had bad credit. I had tickets in a bunch of different states. I had like a revoked license in New York, and just didn't have, just was a kid. And like, so you guys are asking me like, was I similar, years ago? I became an adult over the last couple of years.
I love it.
But I used to really, truly not give a fuck And Andy like didn't know how to take that when we first got together, because she was like, I've just never seen anything like this before. She's like, you have bad credit, you don't care, you have student loans, you don't care about like I was like, I don't know, I'm not paying those fucking people. I'm like, I don't have any money. And she's like,
wait, my mind is blown here.
I know.
Yeah. And she's
it.
like, you're not gonna like, and then like, what about like your license or whatever? You're not gonna get a license? I'm like, I don't know. My brother drives me around, so
That's fine.
And then you drive me around.
And hang on, and,
You know,
and I
so-
don't want to really interrupt. So how did you open a gym, even if it's free? How do you get money to put fucking shit together, get a building?
And just like, that looks good. You
Yeah.
guys come hang out for free.
Like,
it happens.
hang on, I need to know this. This is amazing.
Yeah, you get resourceful. So I originally started my gym in someone else's gym.
Cool.
And as I was doing that, so as much as I painted a picture of me being kind of a bum, I wasn't really a bum. I wasn't lazy. I already had decent work ethic.
Mhm.
I just got behind and didn't know how to handle it. I didn't know what I was doing. I was just being a dude about it and just not caring or pretending I didn't care. The first gym that I was at, I started talking to these people that were starting a gym in Woodland. And when I got in conversation with them, I was like, oh, I'm a local strength coach at the high school. So I worked at Pioneer High School, again in Woodland, California. And I was working with their football team. I was also the defensive line coach. And as I was working there, this gym was opening up in the area. And I was like, oh, it'd be cool if I kind of went to this gym, introduced myself. I just want to see what the gym kind of looks like anyway. So I'm going to go and talk to these people. So I start talking to the owner of the gym, and he's pretty jacked. And we get talking about like powerlifting. And, you know, he starts asking me like my numbers and stuff. And at the time, I think I squatted like 900 pounds and benched like 700 or something like that. And he was like, what the hell? And I was like, yeah, I've been powerlifting since I was a kid. It's a huge thing for me. And, you know, I'm a strength coach at the high school. And so he gets all excited. And he's like, you think you might be interested in like having some equipment in here? And he's like, maybe you can train some of the kids here. Because I was telling him what a pain in the ass it was to train the kids at the high school. Because I'm like, we just have a couple barbells and like shit's like busted up and like it's not so great, you know? And so he was like, well, maybe you can train them here, and it would be great to have that energy here and so on. So I said, shit, like that would be awesome. I was like, and then if it's okay with you, I can train here. He's like, oh, absolutely. So then as we got talking, the idea kind of morphed into I was going to be like a trainer there. And then I recognized like this gym had like no structure. And I was like, well, I can be like a manager here too if you want. Like I'll open the gym up, I'll close the gym at night. I only live down the street.
Awesome.
You know, so all these things started to grow. And I already worked for EliteFTS.com, Elite Fitness Systems. And so I communicated with the owners of the gym and with the people at Elite, like, hey, I can get you a bunch of equipment and I'll get you this equipment at like a reduced rate. Fast forward a couple months, this gym actually was just really burning through money. They didn't really know what they were doing. And it got to a point where I just didn't get a paycheck anymore, but everybody else in the building got paid. I was making pretty good money because I was personal training. I was a manager there as well. So that was working out really good. I was like, this is actually really cool. I'm like bringing home some decent money. This is kind of nice. And I just didn't get a paycheck one day. So I went and talked to them. Of course, they gave me this giant runaround. I said, okay, well, I don't really understand like what's going on, but I can't work here for free. I was like, I need to, you know, I have a family and I spend a lot of time here. And so I need to figure out something different. And so I just said, can I buy some of the equipment and just take off? You know, and we could just go our separate ways. I'm not going to take legal action against you guys for not paying me or anything, because they didn't pay me for like a couple of weeks, you know. And anyway, so they were like, yeah, like let us know what you want to pay for it or whatever. They were so unorganized. You know, I was able to go back in there and just
take quality equipment.
Yeah. I was like, I'll give you $1,500 for it. And they were like, okay, cool. But I gave them $1,500 for probably, I don't know, 10 grand worth of equipment.
Nice.
Yes.
You know, something
Love
like
it.
something crazy like that. And I was able to open up a small kind of like almost storage bin like place
Cool.
That had kind of the that we were next to a Hmong funeral home, and they would like sacrifice animals like right next to the gym.
Oh,
It was
man.
yeah, it was bizarre. But we had this the gym was like 800 square feet, and
Holy
we
shit.
we had like one of the squat racks that you see in there. We had a couple different barbells, some weights, and just everything we needed to kind of get started.
And you're like,
Love
this
that.
is going to be free. Fuck it. I love
That's
it.
amazing. Amazing.
Well, so initially the gym wasn't free. That's actually a good thing to point out. The cost of the building every month was like $900, and I had like 9 people, so I'm
Amazing.
like,
Guys, it's going to be $100 each.
it's gonna be $100 each, and everybody that was involved was super pumped. And we had maybe like 12 or 15 people to start. It kind of grew from there, and once I moved out of that place is when the gym became free, because what transpired from there, and this is where some of the ideas of like having a more open mind came from. I had a friend that loved, who knows why, he just like loved fitness equipment. He loved like old bars and old plates and old this, old that. There's an older gentleman, and he would come around to my gym every once in a while. He would just stop in local gyms. He was always all excited. And he's like, hey man, he's like, I got these kettlebells. He's like, these are so cool. These are like original kettlebells. And he would show me these different, he would show me like a plate. He's always trying to like hawk something to me or sell something to me. He was like, this is original Nautilus piece. He's like, there's only 5 more of these in the US. He's always all pumped about it. I always thought it was kind of cool and interesting. So I had good conversation with him, but he comes in one day, he's all fired up. He's like, there's a gym opening up in Sacramento. He's like, you got to go check it out. And so I'm thinking to myself, well, I already got a gym. Like, I'm not going to go check out this new gym. Well, what's the point? Like, it's just, competition for me or whatever, and, so he comes in again, and he's like, have you checked out that gym yet? And I was like, no, dude, like, why am I going to, he's like, well, maybe you can put your stuff in their gym. And he goes, because you already have, a good amount of membership here. He's like, maybe they would want to have that there. And just like, you guys have a lot of energy in here. And they're like, this is like a big open gym, and they don't have much going on there. So maybe you could be there. So I go into this, gym that was in like Midtown area of Sacramento, and I talk to the owner, and I say, hey, I have a group of power lifters and this and that. So he comes and checks out Super Training. He absolutely loved it. He's like, I'd love to train with you guys. It'd be cool to get strong and this and that. And he goes, I would love to have an opportunity to have you guys, inside our gym, And so I said, I still have a lease here. So the only way that I can move is if I don't have to pay you anything.
Amazing.
And he was like, and I said, I need that for a while, because I'm like, I don't have any money. He's like, what do you mean you don't have any money? I'm like, I don't have a job. I don't do anything.
Fucking lift, man.
I was like, all I do is power lift. And I was like, I got a sponsor here or there that gives me, pays me a little bit of money here and there. And that was all I had. So I moved my stuff into Midtown Strength and Conditioning was the name of the place. And out of having that closed-mindedness, telling my friend, like, dude, I'm not going to go check out that gym. Mm-hmm. I was just driving home one day, and I'm like, what do I have to lose, man? I'm driving this piece of shit van, minivan that breaks down all the time. I should save this story for when Hannah comes back, because it's pretty funny. But anyway, I'm driving this shitty minivan back from the gym, and I'm like, I might as well it's just an exit or 2 away.
Check it out.
I might as well just go check it out, but being so stubborn. And so when I told the current gym owner about Super Training, and I said, hey, look, it's got to be unencumbered. Like, you can't, we play like rap. It's really foul. We play like a lot of metal. I'm like, these dudes are big. They sweat all over the place. I'm like, we're talking about porn, and it's gross, and it's like, we're some nasty people, but we're nice. But from the exterior, when you first see us, you're going to think like, and so I was like, that might not mix well with your clientele. But what this guy was setting up was kind of an unconventional gym, especially for the time, having AstroTurf and having kind of a CrossFit setup.
Yeah.
before CrossFit really, blew up and
What year is this, Mark?
turned into something, around 2007 or so.
Okay.
Yeah. So, it was it was a while back, and like, so having the mindset of like being open-minded and just saying, hey, fuck it, like go check that
See
gym
what's
out.
up, yeah.
It changed everything for me, because that was a huge opportunity for me to expand, and for me to really like learn. Like that's when I just really hit my groove in terms of being able to coach people and just being a better person in terms of like my communication with people. I was just telling him that like I'm driving this piece of shit minivan, and I got super frustrated. So at the time I wasn't always as calm and wasn't always as cool. I'm with both my kids. I'm super frustrated. Forgot about like, I don't know where my wife was on this particular day. I was just getting like angry. Like one kid's crying, the other kid's crying. One kid falls asleep, the other kid wakes up. I'm driving this minivan, and it's like 9,000 degrees here in Sacramento. I'm fat as hell, sweating it out. And I just get frustrated, and I punch the horn of the minivan. Well, the horn goes, and I'm like, oh shit. And so the horn,
it doesn't stop.
Yeah, it just stays on. And then like, I smash it again, and it kind of like chills out a little bit, but just randomly, occasionally it would beep. So I'd like roll through my buddy's like coffee shop, which is like a drive-through coffee shop. And every once in a while the horn would be like, and I'd always look back and be like, who's beeping at me? Like someone's
like an ice cream truck.
Yeah.
Hey, we're coming in.
Yeah. Someone's,
you need to find that van, man.
I know. Yeah. R.I.P. to that van. I think it blew up pretty good on the side of the road somewhere. But anyway, yeah, that was some of the start and some of the beginning, and that is what ultimately allowed me to have the freedom to start to innovate, because I was paying so much attention to the way that we lifted. Everything was super like detailed and dialed in terms of, we had a dynamic effort day where we're trying to produce as much force as we possibly could, move as fast as we possibly could on a bench, squat, or deadlift. Then we had what we'd call a max effort day, where we would lift as heavy as we possibly could. And some of these things ended up kind of later on being in CrossFit. And I ended up working with CrossFit, coaching powerlifting courses for CrossFit via like Louis Simmons and Westside Barbell and all that kind of stuff. So that got the gears turning to the point where I was just on the brink of like thinking of something.
That's amazing.
It's amazing.
And now, did you have anything that you wanted to say to that?
No. I just want to hear more. So you thought about slingshot. It was an elbow injury that you had. Is that how the idea came about?
Pec, right?
Yeah. I tore. I've had a lot of different injuries over the years, so they're hard to keep up with. But I tore my pec several times, and it was probably the second time I tore my pec, I think. I've tore my pec 3 times. You end up with a lot of strains and a lot of just, it's funny to think about it now because it's just so normal. You're like, oh yeah, I tore my bicep.
Cool.
Some people somebody like, tears their bicep in the gym, they freak out, and we're, but at that time it was commonplace. We just would see it happen because we're trying to lift as heavy as we possibly could. So you're going to get hurt here and there. I tore my pec, and I was getting ready for a competition, and I was doing really well. My squats were going really good. My deadlifts were going really well. I was just on fire, and I was like, you know what? This is going great. I go in the gym and I go to take like a heavy bench, and something just kind of it wasn't like a complete, rupture and like blowout, but I tore something, and I was like, man, I screwed myself up again. I'm like, man, I don't know what I'm going to do. Cause I feel great. Like my deadlift and squat are so good. And like, well, maybe I'll give it a couple days. Maybe I can still squat and deadlift in the competition, but maybe I can just take what they would call a token bench press. You just like bench press the bar or something. And so then I started squatting and deadlifting in my training. And as I was doing that, I go to do like a bench press one day, and I'm trying just to move even the bar around just to see if I could even do that. And I really couldn't. Just the pec hurt too much to even get that stretch and to bring the weight down all the way. And so this is where kind of the inventive and creative stuff comes in. I'm sitting in the gym by myself, which I did pretty often. And sometimes I would just go to like sit on like a box. We did like a lot of box squats. And I was like, I would be in there for hours. And I'm like, what happens if I push my knees really far forward on a squat? Then I was like, well, what happens if I push my hips back really far on a squat? What if my feet are really close together? What if my feet are really wide apart? What if my toes are pointed straight ahead? You know, I started figuring things out. I'm like, oh, wow. Feet pointed straight ahead and a wide stance kind of creates almost like a squat suit. You know, in powerlifting, you wear powerlifting gear. You wear a squat suit. You would wear like a bench shirt. This is supportive gear that allows you to lift and handle more weight, but you can also organize your body in certain ways, as we were stacking the bones today with some of the movements we were doing. You can do the same thing in powerlifting, or the same thing when you go to throw a punch. You stack the bones up and you get a stronger result. And the same goes with some of these movements for lifting. And you can lift exponentially a lot more weight doing certain things certain ways, or you can even just have a good training effect that ends up assisting a lift in a competition. And so just one of these days where I was just messing around with something, I started to play around with this bench shirt that I had. And you might have seen there's like a bench shirt on the wall on there. That's one of the bench shirts I benched 800 pounds with. I put this bench shirt on, and this bench shirt was like really big and loose. And it was probably made for somebody much larger than me, even though at that time I was pretty big. And I was able to do full range of motion with like 225 pounds on the bar, which I just told you guys I couldn't even move the bar itself. But now I can move around 225 because this shirt was helping the pain to like dissipate. And the shirt was supportive, and it was taking away some of the stress that a bench press would put normally on my pec. So I kind of shelved that. I just kind of had that in the back of my head. I ended up going to the competition, ended up performing well, ended up being able to use that larger bench shirt. I squatted and deadlifted better than I ever had before. And I didn't end up with a better total because the bench press was not very good for that particular competition. But it put the idea in my brain, and I started to think about it more. And I started to wear that bench shirt. I started to wear that bench shirt more in training. I'm just laughing because I'm thinking like the bench shirt actually had a name. I would name the different bench shirts. This bench shirt's name was Scoopy.
Scoopy.
Because Scoopy was scooped down lower than the other bench shirts. Scoopy. And anyway, so I am training in this thing again, and I'm like, man, I actually think that there's a market for this. Like, this bench shirt thing looks ridiculous. This looks like a straight jacket, you know? So no one would ever want to put this on, not in a commercial gym. But I was thinking, man, there's been so many guys that have come up to me that have said, oh, I used to bench that kind of weight, but I blew out my shoulder.
Yeah.
Or I used to lift that weight, but my elbows, don't allow me to lock out big weights anymore. And I was just thinking, like, what if those people could still do some of these heavier lifts that they love to do? And so I was like, maybe there's an idea here, maybe some sort of concept. And so I played around with a bunch of ideas. All of them were very bad, but that's where innovation comes from. It comes from like shit ideas. Sometimes if you were actually just to think of like, for some of the stuff that you guys do, you can even just practice this sometimes. Just if you guys are sitting down and you're like going over some stuff, just say, all right, Paulo, what's your worst idea today on our clothing brand? And he could say, let's make and you actually, based off of him saying the worst thing, the first thing that came to his mind, you'll actually say, actually, you know what?
That's a great idea.
Yeah, let's build on that. We might be able to make, it probably won't be the exact same thing, you know, because he was all excited about making some shirt with the nipples cut out.
I was thinking about a baby onesie for adults.
Yeah. See,
Cool. Yeah.
there you go.
Let's build on that.
It could start being a trend.
That's so cool, Dan.
But you know, sometimes these bad ideas, you go through them and you scrap them. And so the first thing I did is I bought a really, really tight Under Armour shirt, and I was trying to like bench with that, and like that didn't work. Then one day I was putting my regular t-shirt on, and as I was putting it on, I put my arms in it first without putting my head through. And then I kind of took the shirt and I just like moved my elbows, pushed my elbows back like in a bench press. And I was like, oh, I'm like, something stretchy that goes across your chest that holds on to your elbows. I'm like, okay, that makes a lot of sense, because that's where you would spot somebody if they were doing like incline dumbbell presses. You'd grab them kind of by the elbows or the tricep. I was like, that makes some sense. So I grabbed a pair of wrist wraps, and my dad was kind of helping me with it. And
That's so fucking awesome.
my dad goes to like, he's like wrapping the things around my arms, and I'm like pulling stuff out of the trunk of my car, this other shitty car that I had. And my dad holds on to it, and I pull my arms back, and the strap just goes, and it pops and it hits him in the face. He's like, oh, well, that's not going to work. I was like, no, but that was the right feeling. Like that was what I need. Like this will be perfect. I need something that's like this. And so again, just trying to be resourceful. I think anyone can practice any of these things that I'm mentioning right now. They might think that somehow it's spectacular, but if there's anything spectacular about it, it's just being resourceful. Like I think that we all can walk through some of these concepts anyway.
And you don't let go.
Yeah, you don't let go. Yeah. And so I started to kind of think about, okay, like what can this material be made out of? Okay, that was a wrist wrap. Probably make it out of a knee wrap. And I'm like, who do I know that sews anything? So I asked Andy, like, you know how to sew? Like, she's like, I kind of know. She's like, but no, not really. And I was like, well, we need like someone that knows how to like sew. And so I was like, do you know anybody that knows how to sew anything? And she's like, I kind of think so, you know? And so I started asking people at the gym. I started asking all kinds of different people, and no one really knew much of anything. Then my wife, she's like, I'm sorry. You know, the other day you mentioned, do I know anyone that sews anything? She's like, my friend Marilyn sews our swimsuits for swim practice. My wife is off at swimming every morning at like 6 a.m. because she's a savage herself. And so I was like, oh, that's great. I was like, maybe I can get her number. I can meet up with her. And she goes, yeah. So I grabbed her number. I called her up. She said, all right. She said, let's meet up. We met at Starbucks in Woodland, kind of behind Wendy's over there. I don't know if it's all the same. I think it's all changed a little bit. There's I Love Teriyaki over there that I frequented as well. And I had this pile of knee wraps because I was obsessed with powerlifting, and I was always messing around with these different wraps and these different strengths and different tensions and stuff. And I said, can you sew these things like this? You know, and I kind of made like what looked like an infinity sign.
Okay.
Because it was like a loop, because that was my original kind of idea for it. And then she was like, I don't know if that'll hold together that well. And I'm like, okay, well, you know, and at the time it was only like one knee wrap. And then I was like, what if you took 2 knee wraps and sewed them like this, and then people could stick their arms through there? And she's like, okay. And she drew it. And I was like, there we go. Okay. I think that's going to work. And then, so she came back like a week later, and she made the first ever slingshot, and she pulls it out of the bag, and I'm like, holy shit. I'm like, I think this is the right thing. I slide it up over my arms, and I'm like playing with it. I'm like, can you stay right here for a minute? Cause there's a Fitness 19 right over there. She's like, sure.
Try it.
Yeah. I walk into Fitness 19, just, you know, you're doing the thing like that you always do. you just pretend like you belong there, and you belong there.
Confident.
Yeah. You just kind of wave to the guy at the front desk and just drive right, drive right on past him and ignore him, and he just thinks that you belong there. So he doesn't,
I'm not gonna say shit.
Doesn't check to see if you're a member or not, right? I wasn't a member of the gym at all. So I go over to the bench press. I put a plate on the bar. I do it for a couple reps. And I'm like, oh shit, that worked really, really well. I'm like, but I need a little bit more weight on there to really see if it worked. I put 2 plates on there.
So back still torn.
At this point, I'm starting to recover from it.
Okay.
I'm feeling a lot better, but yeah, it still hurt at the time. I put 2 plates on there and go to unrack it. And yeah, I'm kind of feeling out the pec, and I do a couple reps, no pain at all. I rack the weight. And when I get off the bench, just covered head to toe instantly in goosebumps. I'm like, this is it. This is what I've been thinking of for the last, because it was driving me crazy for a while.
I'm getting fucking goosebumps.
Me too.
Yeah.
This story is insane.
Oh, it was driving me nuts for a while. And it actually, the idea was in my head for years. I went to a few different companies that are in powerlifting. And I said, hey, I got this idea for this bench shirt kind of thing, but it's going to be made out of something different. It's going to be stretchier. And they're like, why would anybody want that? And they're like, well, it wouldn't be as strong as a bench shirt. So I don't understand what. I'm like, bench shirts are cumbersome. They're too expensive. It takes multiple people to get them on. I'm like, they're for powerlifting. This would be for just regular individuals that want to go to the gym. They still like to do some of these movements, bench press, push-ups, and dips, but their shoulders are just dying. Their shoulders are hurt, or they can't do it with the right form, and all these different things. And they were like, nah, we think it's a bad idea. So I started to believe that it was a bad idea. I even went to a friend who later started a company that is a competitor of ours. He later sold off his portion of that, but this guy named Ed Koo, who's a bodybuilder, and Ed was wealthy. Ed would roll up to the gym in a really nice car, good looking guy. I always thought like, shit, man, he's got his shit together, so I'll talk to him about it. I talked to him. He's like, Mark, this is a horrible idea. And I'm like, all right, it's a shitty idea. So we fast forward maybe a few weeks, and I get a call from my dad, and my dad's hysterical. And my dad says, your brother Mike is dead. And I'm like, holy fuck. Okay. I went and I got with my dad and my brother and figured things out, hung out with some of my friends that night. And then maybe a day or two later, I go to sleep and I just have like this, I don't know exactly what happened in my dream. I still don't know this day. It makes me even nervous to kind of even talk about it, but like something spooked me the fuck out. And I don't know if it was like a ghost. I don't know if I had a hallucination because it was a traumatic experience or what was going on. But as I was sleeping, and I may have even been awake, I'm not sure, just a voice in my ear, like directly in my ear, said, think. And I was like, what the fuck was that? And I got up. I walked around the house for a few minutes like I was just charged up, like someone just gave me a shot of adrenaline. I start talking to Andy. I'm like, I don't understand what's happening. I was like, I might have been visited by a ghost. I'm like, up to this point, I don't even know if I fucking believe in that. I don't know if it was like my brother. I don't know what's going on. I was kind of delirious, And she's like, well, what happened? And so I tell her, I was like, I don't know. It's something whispered into my ear. Think, I don't understand what it means or what it is, or like, I don't get it. And so I couldn't go back to sleep, of course. So I just kind of sat there and thought about it a lot. And I was like, you know what? I think I know what this is about. I think I know what this is. I think this means that with the time I have here on this earth, I need to fucking share everything that I got as much as I possibly can. I owe that to myself. I owe that to my mentor, my brother, who taught me how to lift in the first place. And I need to get this idea out, and I need to fucking do it now. and I need to save my family because we were losing our house. And this is the thing. This is like almost like this is the way. And so you can kind of fast forward to like a Rocky montage of, me just trying to figure out how to mass produce this product. Again, because my mom, instilled so much belief in us. I was like, we need like 4,000 or 5,000 of these things.
Mm-hmm.
And Andy's like, what? Like, no one's ever even made one before. How do you know that we're going to sell that many? I was like, I don't know. Like, the manufacturer, they're saying like, it'd be better if we ordered like a bunch of them. She's like, well, of course they're going to say that. That's, they want your money, And I was like, no, we got to do it this way. Trust me, So I was like, we'll be able to sell those in like a year, I think. I think we'll be able to sell them that many in a year. And she's like, are you sure? We didn't have really money to go and do any of that. The first investment to get some slingshots was like $400. So I think that everyone always thinks there's all these hurdles and there's all these things that are going to block you from being able to do it. That doesn't sound like that much money to me. It was money to us at the time, but it still, $400 is not that bad to try to learn whether you're heading the right direction or not.
Right.
Those slingshots didn't work out. They had a weird smell to them. I had an idea to make the slingshot red because I wanted for people to be able to see it if somebody else in the gym was wearing it. A lot of power lifters, because they're bigger guys, they're always wearing black. And I was like, if it's black, then no one's going to even know that they're even wearing a device. So let's make it like bright red. The red ended up leaving red all over your clothes, and the red ended up like on your skin. It was kind of hard to get off. But luckily, that was just the first investment of a really, really small trial batch that we did before we proceeded on to find a better manufacturer and order the 4,000 of them. When we ordered the 4,000 of them, July 27th of 2010.
Okay.
Was
That's the date you proposed to me. Not
Was it?
2010, but July 27th.
Oh, there we go. That's my wife's birthday.
Oh, I love that.
So that was the launch of the slingshot. That was day number 1. And day number 1, we got a great lesson in business. We're super pumped. We went to this restaurant and we're like checking it out on our phone. Like, oh my God, like a couple slingshots sold. Like we made money while we're sitting here. We're like, this is sick. And that was short-lived because somebody made a posting a video of them breaking their arm wearing a slingshot that we gave out some of them early on locally to have people, test them out, try them out, make sure they don't break and make sure they don't hurt anybody. But this individual was like massive and they tried a really, really small slingshot. So if you put a really small slingshot on, it will wedge your arms way in. And yes, you can lift more weight, but if you're not strong enough, it's going to bust you up probably. And so that's what happened. This guy was like trying to lift like 500 pounds and he could only bench like 200 pounds. So it just didn't work out. But like we had that kind of negative feedback, on day 1, because people like on bodybuilding.com were talking about it. And then what happened is like a majority of the comments were, hey man, I don't care if that guy broke his arm. Like I want to be able to bench more weight.
That's
and they're
amazing.
like, what is this thing?
Yes.
And so then, I had a lot of videos just talking about how to use it and like what it does. And it just, it took off from there. We weren't able to sell all 4,000 of them in the 12 months that I said, because we made a whole entire size that was way too small for any normal humans. We made these like itty bitty sizes by accident. So there was just that small hiccup. But other than that, it's been pretty goddamn good. It's been a pretty damn good ride.
Well, we're here
Wow.
today.
The rest of the time.
That's insane. What a
Holy
crazy
crap.
story.
I
Wow.
love hearing these
I'm like
stories, man.
speechless. I'm like, that is insane.
I think we've sold like 1 million of them at
Yeah.
this point. I mean,
Get
we don't
the
have like a
fuck out,
super
really?
accurate record of exactly how many we've sold, but yeah, we've been selling tons and tons of them for many, many, many years.
I have so many thoughts, questions, feelings right now, right? Which is to let people know as well that whenever we had our gym, we connected with someone on your team and we don't
Smokey.
even have, Smoky. We didn't even have barbells in our gym, but they became a staple piece for every single class for trying to teach someone how to do a push-up. So even though we're not powerlifters, like I knew about the slingshot from that point of view. And it's just so amazing to see how well diverse it is.
I
and
still
how many
actually
people
think
can
it's
hit
like
it.
an underutilized and under talked about tool. Like
100%.
Yeah.
it's, you know, I invented it. I sell it. So of course I'm going to be pumped about it, but it works amazing.
It
and I
totally
think
does.
people are like, isn't it cheating and stuff like that?
No.
But no, it's just for training. You know, you don't get to wear a slingshot in a bench press competition unless you're like the individual that we just saw online recently. Guy tried to wear a slingshot
way.
under his t-shirt
No way.
in a powerlifting meet. And it got to be really funny because the guy got disqualified because like somebody in the back recognized that like the guy was moving funny every time he went up to like do the lift or whatever. And somebody, I guess, was like the kind of spotted that he had something fishy going on, and they chased this guy out of the building. And there
Oh
was
my
like,
gosh.
we'll show you guys video a little
I
bit.
can't wait.
You don't want to fuck with powerlifters.
No,
man.
man.
Well, having a powerlifter run, you know,
Yes.
so this is an Italian powerlifter who takes off and starts chasing after this guy, and he's got like video footage, and he's like, "You're wearing a slingshot! You're wearing a slingshot!"
I love it.
It's hilarious. So yeah, it's sold like, you know, internationally, and it's been a huge blessing. I mean, it changed my life forever and really helped provide a lot of financial freedom for me and my family.
Incredible.
So a couple of things. So most of our community, most of our followers, especially with Hannah, are females. And if you guys are watching, you're probably thinking, dude, it's powerlifting. It's not what I do. At Pump Fit, we used to have a dozen, I think, different sizes. And it was majority, I'm talking about 99% of the times, for females to learn how to master the push-up.
That's right.
Because of
we would
course,
see this, right? Elbows out.
this is Hollywood. This doesn't exist. So for females, it's like, man, I don't do push-ups. Oh, but you can do it from your knees, your trainer will say. But still from the knees, it's a lot of demand on your upper body. And if you don't have it, you tend to scratch off your training. And what the slingshot did was to actually have females, and we introduced it in one class. And then from that point on, they would go to the back, come back.
Get their slingshot.
And I'm like, there you go. You see, fuckers, I'm telling you to use
Yeah,
it.
they go to start a
Finally,
workout like
and
this.
then all the females started wearing it
That's
to
great.
master the push-up. So if you are, of course, a female you see Hannah doing push-ups and like, fuck that, I'll never do that. Yes, you can. You just got to start, master the position of the, the joint stack and all that we teach. But it was immense how much it changed. And it didn't stop with the slingshot. After the slingshot, a bunch of other things came around.
The hip circle,
Yep.
which I think I have one in my bag now. I don't think there's ever a moment in time. And I have resistance
That must
bands.
have been kind of neat for you guys to see, especially because like we do know each other. I mean, we're not in like a lot of contact with each other, but the hip circle is a creation of mine. So the booty bands that everyone kind of sees, and like a lot of people sell them, and I actually think it's flattering that other people make them, and good for them. I hope I hope everybody is able to figure out ways of monetizing fitness. I think it's good. It wasn't something I could figure out how to patent because it's a circle,
Right.
you know, but I did create that. So anybody listening to this that has seen those, or anybody who's appreciative of the females and their peaches growing over the years, you have me to thank.
Yeah, right. And I was going to say that we sell the mini bands that are plastic, like we call them loop bands, right?
Absolutely.
But
Yeah.
they're significantly different than a hip circle. Like I would never use maybe a hip circle on my upper body, right?
Right.
But the hip circle itself is something that gives so much stress on both ranges, right? Eccentric, concentric, like it's a fantastic tool that we use almost every single day to warm
Just a
up.
different monster.
Absolutely. And then to stack on top of our regular squats as well. But I have a couple questions because we've been talking over time and to kind of bring all this together. Now, I that story has left me like
I love
mind
it.
blown. That was incredible. So thank you for sharing. But Andy and you have been in this whole weird adventure together this whole time, right? And we were talking about distribution. If you had a fulfillment center, then I meet Owen, that's your videographer. Then I meet your kids, then I meet your family, and it's like, okay, this is another common thread that I've seen with people that are extremely successful is that the support group that are around them have been around them for a long time, and relationships matter to you. You're not shitting on people, no pun intended there, to gain anything. You're bringing people that have meant something to you in your life, that you see something in. You've offered an opportunity for them to grow while you grow. Like the saying of like, as long as all boats are sailing and no one's sinking, then we can all win together. Just hearing this simple story of the person that does all your shipments is still his own company, but yet you guys are in the same building. He was a neighbor of yours. Owen grew up with your son that is now doing your videography. Like, it's very clear here. Andy is your brain in this whole thing, and you can see that your sister-in-law's here, everyone, and your brother's here. This is something that is so common, right? And I think it's how I've been able to stay humble, how you've been able to stay humble, is because we have people in our corner that know us, that know you for you. They'll call you on your shit if you act a little bit out of line. But I think that level of respect that you have for them and they have for you is probably a huge reason as to why you're so successful. Would you agree with that? That you're having your people around you at all times rather than strangers to try and gain?
It's the most important thing. There's like nothing more important than if you're going to try to like go big and do anything. I don't really know. I personally don't know any other way. Maybe somebody else knows some other way, but I don't know any other way than to have multiple people assisting. And I think, anybody listening to this that ever wants to start their own business or even wants to be a great athlete, you need or a great musician or great anything. Like you need it. You need a good support system around you in some way. You have to figure out a way to find it. And the only way to, I kind of have this kind of theory that like the only way to do anything right is to kind of just start. And the way that you start, you sometimes just go the wrong way for a little while. Sometimes it's like kind of mess up. I always use the example of your phone. If you're walking and you're walking from, one store and you're looking for a restaurant, as you guys are walking around Sacramento, what's the fastest way to learn whether you're going the wrong or right way?
Start walking.
Yeah.
Start walking.
Move, exactly.
And then you're like, oh, it says to go the other way. If I can go the other way. Same thing with when you are screwing on the top of your shaker cup, so your protein doesn't go flying everywhere. The only way to like thread it is to start going the wrong way.
Right.
That's the way we learn everything. Everything is learned through error correction. That's where a lot of our knowledge comes from. That's how you it's how you learn the stove is hot when you're a little kid. That's how you learn that maybe you should hold on to the railing when you're 4 or 5 years old so you don't fall, and just that's the way that we learn, is through error. So you may not select the right people right away, but over time, I think that people think sometimes too highly of themselves. I've done this before where I think, oh man, I'm really good at like hiring people, and then you kind of just learn that there's no reason to be attached to that belief. Cause like sometimes the people that you have, sometimes there's nothing wrong with those people, but maybe they're just not correct for you at that particular time. Maybe they're in a different part of their life and maybe you're in a different part of yours. But in order for it to work, in order for you to try to make, for me, it's not about me being successful. It's about the company being successful. And I want to see the people here be as successful as we can possibly and reasonably figure out. So if I bring in somebody that's bad for everybody, but I really like them because it's a buddy, they can't work here. They can't be part of it. They gotta be all in. And the individuals that are here, they're interested enough, they're invested enough in what we do to the point where they're here a lot. They're here for many, many hours. They're working on stuff at home. I know sometimes it's probably not the most ideal thing, but they're like, this is important. This is important to me. I know it's important to Mark. I know it's important to the company. And so that has been that has taken a while for me to learn that part of it. Like, oh, bro, it ain't about you. You know, stop thinking it's about you. Although me as an individual and my name may carry some weight that could be helpful to push something. It has to be about what is best for the company. So even like scratching an idea or scratching a whole category of a particular product or something like that. Or even like we went through a rough transition recently where we let go of a lot of people. That sucked.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, hey, you know what? I'm going to chop off my arm so the rest of the body can survive. We got to figure this out. And if this is what's necessary so we can continue to grow and expand and do the best we can with the people that we still have, then that's what's necessary to do.
That's amazing. I think we've learned the hard way, right? It's like what being young and egos pumping at that stage is like, we want to be the owners of this business. We want to be the best in the building. It works against you. And whenever you, usually from failure, right? You recognize, oh shit, we don't need to be the superstars. We need to have a team of superstars that have their own thing going for themselves, that understand that we support their dreams as well as our own. And the common goal here is really to change lives, right?
Yeah, look who I selected to be on the podcast with me.
Yeah. Oh my gosh,
You know what I mean?
absolutely.
Like,
Absolutely.
I mean, Andrew's amazing at being our podcast engineer and setting up a lot of the stuff that we do, and he kicks ass doing that. But initially, like, I was just trying to figure it out on my own, and I wasn't really exactly sure where I was going with the podcast. But I see Nsima, and I'm like, this would be perfect. You know, let me bring this dude. This dude's a little taller than me. He's a little more jacked than me. He's leaner than me. He can kick my ass. That's what I want.
Yeah.
Like, let's, you know what I mean? Like this guy, he can throw down. Like, let's side up with this guy
Right.
rather than like, let's have this weird, bro bullshit going on between each other where I think I'm better than him and he thinks I'm better than me. Like, no, let's just join forces and fucking kick ass together.
Kick ass.
That's the way to go. It really is. It's a hard thing to see though when you're in it though, right? Because you're like, oh, if I bring this guy in, he might make it less about me and more about him. And all these conversations are probably happening even with our coaches and like having people sign non-competes. And it's like, okay, now you're wanting them to believe in your dream, but you're crushing all of theirs, you know? So I think it's really cool to see. And I think we're learning from just being around you and the people that are on your team that there's enough people for everybody, and genuinely believing in the people on your team and having the respect for each other is key for everyone to grow, for sure. And even the fact that the warehouse guy is still here, and Casey,
who was dressed up
As a
randomly for
suit.
some reason.
he looked very
Whoa,
dapper
what the
today.
fuck?
Yeah.
And he goes, I don't want to talk about it. And just that.
Yeah, but hearing that story is cool, man. It's like you take care of your circle, and your circle takes care of you. So, man,
Done.
such a crazy, cool conversation today. It's been a long one. I appreciate your time. Thank
Yeah,
you so
man.
much for sharing. Babe, do you have any more questions?
No more questions. Just a bunch of thank you. Like thanks for the lifting sessions. Thanks for the
Yeah,
pain
man.
cave that we got into.
Oh, that was brutal.
For, hosting us, showing us to the entire team, to the whole family, for having us for taco night. Hey, man.
Oh, that was
Oh, you guys
That
can
that was
cook.
spectacular,
That was
right?
nice.
Amazing. Thanks
Oh,
to
yeah.
Andy for cooking that feast for us. Yeah,
Absolutely.
very thankful.
For real. We're super grateful for all this opportunity, super grateful for all the nuggets that we could take away, not just selfishly Powell and I, but everyone that's listening as well. Where can these guys find you? What do you got going on at the moment? Share it all.
I don't care if people find me or not. I do want to kind of just end on saying, that my wife, I know we were touching upon it a bunch, but like, none of this is happening in this way without her. She, I've mentioned earlier that I don't care that somebody has to care. Somebody has to. There has to be. I don't know how much the home that you guys were in the other day. I don't know how much it cost. I don't know how much the overhead is on this building. I don't know what all this stuff in here costs that we're podcasting off of at the moment, but somebody's got to know that stuff. You can't be blind, because you could be blindsided and your business could be over in a heartbeat. Andy is the one that looks at all that stuff. She's the one that shoulders all that stuff. And there's things that happen here that the team is so strong and so powerful that they're like, let's just not talk to Mark about this. Like, not that they're trying to hide anything. Let me gather more information, because this is not going to be productive for him to hear this. So let me gather more information. And when I get the correct information, then we'll maybe clue him in if we think he needs to be clued in. But they a lot of times they won't do it. My wife is the same way. So she's going around holding all these things. And I tell her sometimes, I said, okay, listen, just tell me, just to get it out. And I'm not going to say anything. Just like, I'm not going to be fired up, or I'm not going to go this way or that way, or I'm not going to tell you what to do. Just say it, just to say it. And I'll say, yeah, that's fucked up. And I'll I'll let you have a bitch session, and I'll bitch with you, if you want, those kinds of things. And so it's been amazing. It's been great that those individuals kind of keep me almost sheltered from some of those things, because they're like, hey, for this place to be the best, we're going to need Mark to continue to be creative and continue to maybe sometimes be in his own world. So
yeah,
I'm grateful for that.
You got a solid team, and I can say that for sure. Andy is a rare breed, and we use the term sick fuck in the most positive way. Like, we're all sick fucks.
Yeah, she did the Alcatraz swim recently.
Oh my gosh, just even listening for her choice of a vacation, I'm like, next time you go, please invite me. Swimming around the island of Greece, I mean, just sounds like a savage human being, and a beautiful, beautiful person as well.
Thank you.
On the outside and on the in. So thank you. Thank you for letting us into your world.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, dude.